this time. Oh, come on. Come on. Go live. There we go. Okay, we're live. But what's the audio situation? Come on. What is going on? See if I've got the audio working. Hello? This is a test for the audio. Okay. Good. Hello, Top Turtle. How are you? Trying to see. Still no sound? The sound worked for me just now when I tested it. Let me pull it up on my phone. The sound's fine for Top Turtle. Okay, and Aldi says that, okay, comic book guy. Okay, people do hear me. Okay. Okay. I'm trying to figure out where I want to put this. Maybe up here somewhere. Sort of, it's manga. It's not. I'll explain in just a moment. It's a little different than usual. All right, I think that'll work for today. Hey Shirley. Okay. Hi Sigamigs. So yeah, I hope this is working. I was trying a new camera, couldn't really figure it out. It seemed to have better resolution, but I can't figure out how to focus it, and I couldn't figure out how to get the sound to work, so I'll have to practice with that. In the meantime, I've got my sort of usual camera here. What am I doing today? Just a very simple sort of multi-panel thing here. Yes, it's sort of manga in the sense that it is, hello TARDIS Rider, it is something I'm going to send to Shueisha. They are the publisher of stuff like Shonen Jump, all the Jump magazines, and I am working hard to arrange a visit for a Comic Tropes episode in about a month. It'll probably take a little while to edit and stuff, so you probably won't see it for like, I don't know, in 2 months. But anyway, I'm going there. I'm in touch with someone at Shueisha, and they suggested I just write a formal letter to them. And I have. On top of that, I've translated the letter into Japanese and made some simple panels of myself describing who I am and what I want to do. So anyway, that's the idea here, and you can't hear me very much, okay? One moment. Let's see if there's anything I can do for the audio. What can I do for the audio? Great. There's got to be a way to do this. I'm going to try something. having a hard time with this thing. Usually my fiance can help me set it up, but she's busy working right now. Well, I don't know what to say other than crank up your volume. I don't know. I don't know how to fix this. Sorry. I'm just gonna muddle through. This is the worst stream I've done. I'm sorry. How frustrating. How frustrating. Volume's low, but I hear you. Yeah, I really can't figure out how to fix that, unfortunately. That's how strange. Whoa! Convert this to yen and buy a beer. Thank you, TARDIS Rider. I will do that. I will. I tell you what. I can't promise, but when I'm recording my episode, I will try to remember to drink a beer and give you a shout out, okay? There's obviously a lot of stuff that will be going on there, but I will try to do that. Thank you very much. Oh, hey, did you want to take a look at the settings? Yeah, feel free. Okay, I'm going to pause this stream for just a moment, and I'm going to try to fix the audio. I'm going to be right back, okay? Just be patient. The stream's coming back. Okay, you just don't want to be on camera. All right. So what I'm going to do is instead I'm going to, Chrissy just doesn't want to be famous right now, so, and that's fair. That's fair. So you're going to look at that, and yeah, take a quick look. But I feel like I looked at all the settings.
Oh no, my son was on the video.
Oh no. Now you're infamous.
Oh no.
TARDIS Rider gave me $5 to buy a beer in Japan.
Ooh, you're generous.
Yeah. Isn't it all the way up? Oh, you can like adjust some more stuff. See, I don't know about all this stuff. I'm dumb. Oh, is that what captures the audio?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I mean, it sounds like people can hear. It's just a little on the soft side.
Let's see if this changes.
You can go.
That's better. Okay, now it actually is this that's picking it up.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know what this thing is, but
Yeah, Aldi, be careful. Don't. I guess I don't want you to have to turn your audio all the way up, but we're fiddling with some some settings.
do you want to try and fix the like contrast?
Yeah.
Let's see. Which one is it?
That one.
Yep. Okay. So. You can adjust.
I know that I can zoom in and out with that. Like,
Okay,
how does
then
that sort of
I'll
work?
let you take over then.
Oh, okay. All right. Hey, thanks for your help.
Yeah. Sorry,
You're the best.
wasn't available.
No, oh, hey, you don't need to be. You're working. I'm just doing this. All right. All right. Chrissy is the hero, right, everybody? Did you try turning it off and back on again, says Shirley. I love it. I love it. I'm a big fan of the IT crowd. All right. So I'm just closing out some of my settings now. Hopefully this is better than what I started with. So let's get that up here. Okay, much better volume. Oh, that's great. I'm so glad. Chrissy's so smart, and I try. I know about 70% of this stuff, and Chrissy knows 100%. So, Chrissy, the real MVP. Yeah, she comes out of nowhere and saves the day, huh? That's nice. All right, so my idea for this first panel is I'm sort of saying that I do a YouTube show. I'm an American and I do a YouTube show about comics, and that what I do with the show, like, in terms of like reviewing comic book history and technique. So I want them to understand what my show is, and then I'm asking Shueisha for permission to go upstairs to their editorial floor. I don't know if I'm going to be allowed to. There's a million reasons why they could easily say no. So we'll see. We'll see. But like I said, I talked to an editor, and that person suggested I write a formal letter and mail it. So I figured if I'm going to go to the trouble of mailing an actual letter, maybe if I just show them how much I love comic books by sort of drawing what I'm asking for, that maybe that'll like carry some weight with them. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe this will offend them because it's not up to their standards. We'll see. Ah, look at all this. Oh, look at Chrissy smiling, and yeah, she's the queen. And so I wrote the letter and had it translated, and then I took that and wrote these characters myself. I'm trying to find the right sort of angle. And I didn't do it 100% right because they gave it to me like a Word document where it's reading left to right. And sometimes Japanese people will read stuff like this online and stuff. But when you see it in manga, it would really be more like this line all the way down, then this line like all the way down to the left, etc. Because you read right to left. So like really I should sort of have it more like this. But it was just too much for me. I couldn't like, yeah. I mean, I don't know what each of these letters is. I know what some of them are. So it was very difficult. And if you can like sort of, here, I'll I need to cut my fingernails, so that's kind of gross. But I'm going to put my finger next to it, and you can sort of see how small some of these characters are, so that, like, I'm putting it at a regular sort of font for a comic book. Woo! I don't have my Google Translator app on my phone right now, Chrissy. Otherwise, that would be interesting to sort of hold it over and see if it makes an instantaneous translation. Anyway, so back to the actual artwork. That's why we're all here, right? Enough of this jibber jabber. Enough gibbering and jabbering, quivering and quavering. So, what's new with everyone? 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry, counting something out loud to myself. Anybody see Black Panther yet? I went out and saw it last night. I liked it quite a bit. Something a little bit different. Very well made. But I won't say any details about it. Don't worry, I'm not going to spoil anything. Just saying that overall I liked it. I like the face next to the word YouTube. Let's see, the face. Oh yeah, I know. Like this character here, I guess you're talking about there. That does sort of look like a smiley face, doesn't it? It shows up in a couple places. I started to recognize certain characters. But then some of them, like whatever this is like 4 characters. Like it takes 4 other characters and puts them in like real small. I don't know what that is. Oh, it's hard. All right, let's bust out ye old pens. I bought some new pens, so hopefully these are up to the task. I was getting frustrated with my pens the last time I streamed with you guys. I was drawing something. I was drawing a G.I. Joe for somebody, and it the brush was sort of splitting. It was driving me nuts.
Hi, Townsville Tale. Yes, I am writing a letter to a Japanese publisher, and it's for comic tropes. I'm trying to get permission to visit somewhere, and I decided if I'm going to write a letter, I might as well sort of make it into a what do you call it? A comic book page, basically, just for fun. What are your thoughts on Punisher getting the War Machine armor? It's fine. It's something a little different. It's hard to do different things with Frank Castle. He's not the deepest character, so he'll get the armor for a little while, and then eventually he'll either lose it or decide, this isn't the right way to punish. So that's fine. Sorry, I got confused because I just got a notification. At the same time that Dark Dragon asked me something about Punisher, I got a notification. I get notifications when people leave comments sometimes on my comic tropes things. And someone had been watching my old Frank Miller video and said, like, Frank something something. And I got really confused. I'm like, why am I reading my live stream here and getting a pop-up notification there? I thought that they were talking about Frank Castle for a minute. Shueisha is one of the greatest publishers in Japan. Yes, they're huge. So I'm doing an episode about what makes them unique and some of their history, and specifically I'm going to get into discussing One Piece and how it's been able to remain popular for as long as it has. It's the best-selling manga of all time. So I figured if I'm going to Japan and I'm going to cover a manga that I haven't covered before, that was sort of in the running for worth discussing. So I'm talking about One Piece, and then at some point down the road, I'll take a look at their current like mega hit title, My Hero Academia. Anyway, so that's what I got going on. I know I missed a bunch of comments. I'm thinking of a bunch of different stuff. Darth Piet says, I'm going to watch the Transformers 1986 movie. Subscribe to my awful cringy kid channel. Okay, that person was just promoting their blog. That's fair. That's fair. The Transformers movie from 1986 is not necessarily good, but it is entertaining, and it came for me at the right time. I was so into Transformers in 1986. That was the height of my interest in them, and going to see that in the theater was a big treat for me, actually. So that's one that I can definitely like rewatch and enjoy at a minimum for nostalgia. TARDIS Writer says you should visit Korea on your trip if possible. It's not possible, unfortunately. I would really like to go to Korea. That would be nice. I would love to visit Busan. I would love to visit Seoul. I've got a good friend. My episode that I did Godzilla fairly recently, my friend John, he lived and worked in Korea for a number of years, and he's a big fan of their food and entertainment. So he having lived there, he's told me all sorts of cool stories about where to visit, and I could always ask him more. Ever since I did like a live stream like 2 streams ago. Someone said you generally have more control over your pencil, your brush, whatever tool you're illustrating with, if you pull towards you instead of push away. And I found that like my habit is absolutely to generally push. So I've been trying to sort of like work at like pulling a line towards me to get that supposed like better control. I'm not there yet, but it is kind of an interesting change. It's interesting to come across something big that you can sort of change after you've been drawing for as long as I have. And I'm not saying that I'm good. I'm just saying that, of course, I've been drawing for my whole life, so I've been drawing for a long time, and it was very interesting to learn that technique. So it's something I'm playing around with here and there, and I'll try to do it today. Shirley asks if I'm going to see Black Panther. Saw it last night. No spoilers from me, but I liked it. I'll just leave it at that. I liked it. I liked it a lot. I don't know where I'd rank it yet, but it would be towards the top. I have to think about it. I'm just sort of adding some texture and details to this pencil that I'm sort of breaking the fourth wall in this illustration with. I'm actually not even going to finish this whole drawing. I'm just going to like act like it was started and not finished. I think. I may change my mind as I keep working on this. Let's see. Sigamig says, I saw a physical copy of Shonen Jump and was wondering, how do you keep track of series if they're all bunched up in a phone book? Well, the popular series get released later in what they call tankobon, or what you could basically call a trade paperback. So, like weekly Shonen Jump has, the somewhere on it has the date, so that you could like always stack those up, but in chronological order. But if you were only following 1 or 2 series within those anthologies, you could always just sort of wait and get the actual volumes, the numbered volumes later. Yeah. In my opinion, Punisher doesn't fit today's world. If he was real, he would make the world worse. I kind of agree, comic book guy. It's a Punisher is I don't know. He's definitely not as popular as he was in the 90s, for one thing. But it's sort of weird to glorify a guy who just runs around shooting people with guns. That's all he does is kill criminals. And he specifically does it with guns. And we've got a gun epidemic. So Punisher is sort of... I liked what Rick Remender and Tony Moore did with him when they turned him into Frankencastle for a while. I thought that was a very different but fun story and a way to actually explore who the Punisher was. And I think that that's the trick. I think that a lot of writers just sort of give up on trying to explore Frank as a character, Frank Castle, and instead they just sort of give him interesting supporting characters and villains primarily, but then they all get killed off, so you're sort of back to square one a lot. Funny you mentioned My Hero Academia. This is Top Turtle. I'm drawing one of the characters right now. That's awesome. Wow, TARDIS Rider lived in Korea from 95 to 2010. All right, so 15 years. That's amazing. Sigamigs, thank you. I'm glad that you enjoyed that. That was sort of a spur of the moment thing, not necessarily something I really have other plans for, like me and a friend just sitting down and discussing Godzilla, because primarily my show is me. I don't. Every once in a while, a friend has helped me with something, but primarily the show is just me. Shift to this panel since I've got my ruler here and try to get some of these building lines down. The way they make comics in Japan is so different. At least, you know, at a big publisher like, you know, Kodansha or Shueisha, they generally, like the main artist will have a small team to assist him. He'll have assistants that will frequently do things like the buildings and backgrounds and stuff like that, the shading. But here in America, pretty much one guy does it all. I mean, we have a team in the sense that, yeah, there's a colorist, there's a letterer. Most of the time, there's still an inker, but we don't really have one person draw the main characters and then, like, you know, a team of 2 or 3 other people drawing the background characters and the buildings and the vehicles and stuff. It's very different. Yeah. So that'll be a little bit of what I discuss in the video that I'm going to make over there. And then I'm also going to make a video in Hong Kong, because Hong Kong also makes comic books. There's a guy there named Tony Wong, who is sort of the grandfather of manhwa, which is what they call their comics. And I think I'll be discussing his work. I think that's my current plan. You know, it's funny. I think every artist will probably admit that they draw themselves to a degree in almost every character. But then when it comes to actually drawing yourself, you always have to like make these choices where you're like, oh, I'm tempted to like sort of make myself look a little better by giving myself, you know, fuller hair, or you know, not quite as fat. Yeah, TARDIS Rider. The way that Dave Sim and Gerard work on Cerebus is to a degree the default normal process in Japan. Where could I find some of the books you drew for? Your best bet, Eric, would be Amazon. Just because, well, first of all, like I've done a lot of like sort of indie press stuff, and I have no idea where you'd find that stuff. I mean, maybe someday I'll like pull the copies of what I have out and put them up for sale, but I don't think there's a demand for that right now. But I have worked on a few books that I've worked on some anthologies that are publicly available on Amazon. There's Trickster, which is all stories written by actual Native Americans about their specific tribe's version of the Trickster legend. I illustrated a story for that, and I illustrated stories in both Colonial Comics Volume 1 and 2, Colonial Comics. So anyway, yeah, you can find that stuff on Amazon. And frequently you can find it in, like, you know, Barnes and Noble or any bookstore, like and a lot of libraries carry that stuff too that I just mentioned. So all those books sold very well with libraries, and people sleep on libraries. But think about it, for American comics. I mean, we have, you know, several hundred stores, comic book stores in this country. We have thousands of libraries. So if your comic sells well in a, what do you call it, in a library, you're doing very well. Go away. Sorry, I got a pop-up notice I'm closing. Those feet are tricky, ask Rob Liefeld. Well, I'm sort of doing it stylized, and they're in like sort of socks, but I kind of like them. I think that they'll look better as I add the webbing here. But you're all more than welcome to critique my work. I mean, I criticize, or and I mean that like, you know, just in a formal way, not like in a mean way. I criticize comics all the time, so I would be pretty hypocritical if I was like, leave me alone, I'm doing my best. No, you can critique my work. I know it has issues. But I love drawing and still trying to get better all the time. Libraries are how I got into comics. That's awesome. That's from Sigamigs. Yeah. Libraries are fantastic. They carry a lot of comics and it's free. So I'm a big fan of libraries myself. Nice to hear I'm not the only one. So there's my technique again of like pushing, and I should instead be pulling. But I feel like I bump into my own fingers that way because they just don't slide right. I've not taught my fingers the right way to slide this way. They slide that way. Makes sense to artists. I hope you guys know what I'm talking about. I'm sure most of you do, if not all. So sorry, I get quiet every once in a while because I'm actually kind of having fun right now drawing this stuff. But what's new with everybody out there? What new comic books have you discovered? Trying to think of like the newest stuff I've picked up. I did pick up some stuff recently. Let's see. I picked up a bunch of Black Panther stuff when I was doing that review, and I'm still like reading through some of that. But oh, I picked up the latest Kill or Be Killed by Brubaker and Phillips. That's one of my favorite titles. Anything they do is great. Let's see, Mr. Who. Where to find comic book or manga drawing material if you don't have an Amazon card to buy it? The library. Oh, geez. I banged my table and everything went crazy. Let's see. That's good enough. What you're seeing here is this is a light ring. It makes everything down here much more visible and easy to see. So this is Shueisha. Let's see. I'm writing the name of the building, and I'm also trying to double check. There's like 3 symbols that form the word Shueisha, and I know I wrote them a bunch, so I'm looking for reference here because I only just sort of left little notes up here. Where is it? Ah, there it is. Okay. It is tricky to make the symbols of a language that you don't really know, because you want it to be identifiable and legible, but you don't know like what sort of tricks and techniques people use as shorthand for their letters unless you live there. Well, hope I did it right. Oh, you guys didn't see, darn it. Kill or Be Killed. Dardis Writer says, I'm a huge fan of classic comic strips, and that's largely due to getting the Smithsonian Book of Comic Strips in Bern Hogarth's Tarzan from my library. That's very cool. That's the origin of comics there. It's, all those comic strips. I'm reading the new Marvel 2-in-1 with the Thing and Human Torch. Very cool. Oh, Cookie Madison joins us and says, hi from New Zealand. Discovered comic tropes a couple months ago. Love the channel. Been out of comics for a while, but coming back. Maybe. Well, whether you do or don't, hopefully, my videos can sort of give you a little bit of comic book history, comic book techniques, maybe satisfy that that urge, that longing. Where in New Zealand? Anywhere that I might have heard of? My grandfather was born in New Zealand. That's where my family all came from. Like 25% of my family, like they all came from New Zealand, and I'd have to ask my mother, like what part of New Zealand. But I really, really want to visit. I really, really want to visit New Zealand. That's very high on my list. Like from tip to tip, I want to see the whole thing. Thank you, Mr. Who. I sort of did a little bit of the Shueisha name here, but like it's very sort of tiny, and hopefully it's noticeable for what it is. Mr. Who is from Quebec. Oh, Sigamigs, you finished Habibi. More power to you. That is a very dark book. Blankets is got sadness in it, but it's much more positive. Blankets is beautiful. You're gonna love it. I think everybody that I've ever shared blankets with has loved it. Screwed up. Really didn't want to. I know you're going to ink it, it will be great, but right now your self-portrait looks like Hank Hill. Yeah, probably. I'm trying to be honest about what I look like instead of like what I wish I looked like, you know? Trying not to draw myself too thin and good looking. All right, while I wait for that to dry, I am going to go back to this foreground building here and start throwing down some black. One thing that's tricky right now is if I was just drawing this for almost anything else, is if I made a small mistake, I wouldn't really care because I could fix it in Photoshop. But I'm actually going to mail like this actual page to them on the Bristol. So I want to get it as well as I can, the actual artwork. So sometimes I'll have to use some like whiteout or erasing where normally I wouldn't. Cookie Madison is from Auckland. Yeah. I'd love to see Auckland, Cookie Madison. That sounds great. Shirley says, I didn't know about your grandfather being from New Zealand. Yeah, he was born in New Zealand, and when he was very young, my great grandfather passed away. I can't remember what it was, but there was a big sickness at that point in time going around in New Zealand. He was a shepherd, a sheep farmer, and he got sick and passed away. So without many opportunities, my great grandmother took my grandfather, an only child, and she headed for America, for California, where she had a sister. The sister had moved there several years ago, so she that was like the only family she had, and she didn't have a job or anything. So she and my grandfather got on a freighter and headed out to America. And while they were there were some really bad storms. And at one point, my grandfather, who was just like, like something like 8 years old tops, was hit with a wave and nearly swept right off the deck into the ocean. But a really brave sea hand jumped and caught him as he was just about to be swept over the edge of the ship. Very scary. Uh, anyway, yeah, it sounds like it was pretty dramatic. My grandfather wouldn't talk a lot about it. I mostly got these stories from what he had told my mother, because his mother, had to just go straight to work, and she had like next to no money. So he actually grew up in an orphanage, and sometimes she would visit him. But my grandfather mostly grew up in an orphanage. But he was originally from New Zealand. Uh, he loved it. He went back before he passed away and went with my mother, and they say it was wonderful. And I'm very jealous. I was like, why couldn't you have brought me? I was working at the time. I couldn't get the time off. But anyway, yeah, a little about me. Let's see. Mr. Who says, well, I could only buy an ink to inked my art and a plume, French for feather. Okay, I don't think I quite understand everything there. Sorry. Comic Book Guy says, will you ever cover Dick Tracy? Absolutely, I will. Yes. I don't know exactly when, but it will probably be this year. I've definitely got some ideas about what I want to talk about with Dick Tracy, because there's some funny stuff going on there. Yeah, Dick Tracy's pretty cool. It's very unique anyway. Or it was for its time. It was well done. No, there is something pretty unique about it that I want to talk about. The level of violence in it. Hold on, I lost the window here. Okay, just making sure that I'm keeping the artwork centered while I chit chat with all y'all. Really wish I could play music while I do this stuff, but then YouTube would demonetize it. At least the music that I want to listen to, which is all sorts of commercial stuff. So be it. Maybe someday I can get a sponsor. Had somebody reach out to me this past week about offering to host my streams, but he didn't seem to really know what I was doing, and I didn't understand his business model at all. So I said, thanks anyway. I don't get it. I'm happy to keep doing it on YouTube this way, thanks. but I guess I'm at least doing enough streaming, which isn't much, but at least enough to start getting noticed by little businesses that think they can make money off of me. Hey, Miles. I'd love to see a TMNT episode. I did one, Miles. I did one like it was like the 5th or 7th or just pretty early on. I did and you know what? I'll do another someday. But since I've already done one, as soon as I've covered a topic or a creator, they do fall like, a little lower on the priority scale for when I will cover that again. But yeah, I did one. I love Ninja Turtles. Now I've been thinking that I might do sort of a bonus thing where I actually have a strange collection. I collect variations of Donatello action figures. None of the other Ninja Turtles. I love them all, but I only get the versions of Donatello, and I have a lot. And I've been thinking that might sort of be fun and weird to sort of do like just a bonus content type thing, like showing all these different strange figures that I've collected. Some of them aren't so strange, but a lot of them are. Let's see. Can't believe daylight savings time will be back on March 11th. Yeah, that'll be nice. That'll be real nice. Get some sunlight back in my life. Mr. Who asks, what artists inspired you? So many. Will Eisner, John Romita, Senior and Junior. Who else did I love growing up? I definitely went through my phase of being into Jim Lee and that because I grew up in I was getting comics in the 90s. So I definitely went through that. Not as much now. Dave Johnson, Tony Moore, and Cory Walker is like sort of contemporaries of. I love anything they do. Sean Phillips, Sean Gordon Murphy. Those are some of the ones that inspire me. If any of you out there have some artists that especially inspire you, sound off. Let us know who inspires you. Miles says Leo was his favorite turtle. That's fair. I like Leo a lot too. I like them all. I really do. You know what? It depends on what sort of version of Ninja Turtles we're looking at to sort of determine which my favorite character is. Because in the what do you call it? Computer animated Nickelodeon show that's going on now, like that Michelangelo really has won me over. I just find him very charming. Let's see. I thought I had seen all your episodes. I'll have to check it out. Yeah, Miles, you check that out. It'll be in the playlist, or you can just search, like, comic tropes, Ninja Turtles, and I'm sure it'll turn up. One of my earlier episodes, and obviously the show has sort of evolved. I think that's fair to say. So, it's a little different, but that was a really fun one because I did it with a friend. And we watched, I think, the third Ninja Turtles movie in that one after we look at the comic. Am I centered? Yeah. Let's see. Sorry, I've got a small hair on the brush that I want to get off because I don't want it to spread the ink the wrong way. It's yeah, there, got it. All right, let's see. An artist that really inspires me, this is Top Turtle, is Butch Hartman. I loved all of his cartoons. Two more are Crooked Glasses and You. Ah, that's very sweet. Thank you. Cookie Madison says, deep love for Alex Raymond, especially his Rip Kirby newspaper strip. Very old school, I know, but amazing. Yeah, definitely. Alex Raymond, Alex Toth, oh, there's so many guys too, like, in the 50s that I look at, like, Wally Wood and Al Williamson. I don't know. There's just a lot of really sort of great classic illustrators that fit in this certain genre in my head. Mark Bariner says, Donatello is my favorite because I liked his weapon the best in the old NES game. That game was impossible. Oh, that game was so frustrating, and I played it relentlessly because as a kid, I didn't know there was such a thing as a bad game. I thought that I was just not a good player. Yeah, I was literally young enough that I just was like, oh, if I can't beat a game, that means that it's my fault. It's not that some games are harder than others. It's just that I'm not good at a certain game. I just sort of like let out a little laugh that reminded me of Tommy Wiseau for some reason. Mr. Who says, the artist I hate is Hergé. Wow. Why do you hate him? You hate the guy that does Tintin? I like that stuff. Move that back up. That's interesting. Mark Silvestri says Alexander de Macedonia. Yeah, Silvestri's really good. I like Silvestri. I support that one. Let's see what I can do here. Hi, Milos. Don't worry, I feel like I'm not even necessarily halfway with this. Comic Book Guy says, you should cover Silver Surfer. The Marvel Now ones are strange but fun. Are those the ones that Mark Allred did the artwork for? I haven't read Silver Surfer in a little while, so I'm really not sure. But I liked the sort of idea of Silver Surfer with a companion, almost like Doctor Who. I thought that was a pretty innovative idea. I have to keep shifting this. I'm so sorry. I keep forgetting to check if I've got it centered on screen. Just getting some finer detail in like the sketch lines I did for the building windows. Does that look right? Yeah, good. Architecture is something you have to get exactly right. You can't Can't half-ass that. Just my opinion. Let's see, some other questions. Gotta go. See you, Shirley. Top Turtle says, probably the most inspirational artist to me is Rob Liefeld. He showed me that you don't even have to be remotely competent artist to be successful. Well, I see what you're saying. I mean, he's certainly successful well beyond what his talent dictates. But if you go back and look at like what he was creating when he broke in, it was a lot more sort of energetic than a lot of what we'd been seeing at the time. And he was very young. So people thought, hey, if this is his starting point, you know, he'll only continue to improve. And I think that the biggest problem, if you want to call it that, with Liefeld's work is just that he, I don't think he really ever improved. I don't think he ever really tried to. Maybe that's mean of me to say. I think it's true, though. I feel like if you put 5 drawings in front of somebody, even like somebody that knew comics really well, could identify different artists and stuff. But if you put like 5 drawings of Liefeld's from over the years, right? No colors or anything like that to necessarily indicate the era that they were created in, just sort of his artwork. I don't know. It wouldn't necessarily be that easy, I don't think, to tell what he did when. I think that like a drawing that he does today, it looks a lot like a drawing he did 10 years ago, looks a lot like a drawing he did 20 years ago. There's not really an evolution there. A lot of artists will have some sort of an evolution. You can usually sort of like roughly place their stuff chronologically. Just my opinion, I guess. All Red's awesome. I agree, Cookie Madison. Great artist. Really like his stuff. Why can't they kill off Marvel and DC heroes? Other countries kill off their characters all the time. Probably because most other countries, it's the artist that owns the property, and so they have complete control. And if they're not going to work on it or oversee it, they're fine killing off a character. Marvel and DC, their model is ongoing serialization. No end in mind. The companies own that intellectual property. They have no business interest in killing off a character. Like, what's the business sense when you can keep telling stories with those characters? So that's the difference. What are your thoughts on Ennis? I used to be a big fan of his. That's Jack Pride. That came up, like, I think it was only my second episode ever. I talked about Preacher and Garth Ennis. I was a big fan of Garth Ennis when Preacher was coming out. I was a big fan, and I enjoyed a lot of what he did with Punisher. Not everything, but I enjoyed a lot of it. And I don't know that it's all aged that well. Like, there was always a little bit of a mean-spiritedness to it, but it was played for laughs. But now I go back and there's a little bit of like gay panic humor and stuff that I didn't pick up on when I was younger. And that's a little like sort of like, that's sort of punching down, like he's capable of making a better joke than just sort of like making fun of like a gay guy. My opinion. He's got talent, he can develop a good character arc. He can write funny stuff. He can write exciting action stuff and good twists and turns. So he's very capable, but I think he punches down a little bit with his humor. I guess that's what I sort of mean to say. He doesn't like superheroes. He makes no bones about the fact that he likes making fun of superheroes. There's a place for that, I suppose, especially like an audience that's just starting to grow out of superheroes, but I don't know. It feels a little out of place in Marvel and DC to me. To me. Aldi says there is a reason why your Liefeld episode is the most viewed on the channel. Yeah, I wish it was my best episode. I don't really think it is. Who knew what, like, my channel would be or what it would evolve into. I just wanted to talk about an artist that I was very familiar with. I knew Liefeld comics because that's what I read growing up. I had all of his stuff. Hawk and Dove from DC, New Mutants, X-Force, like I read all of it. There was a time I thought it was great. I'm not so into it now, but I won't deny that there's an energy to his work. What company you work for? Marvel or DC? Neither. They're both great. Let's see. Oh, Mr. Who says some of the artists that he loves. Uderzo Peo, yep, love Smurfs. Rob Bell, I don't know that one. And GJ, don't know that one. I'm sorry. But I loved Peo growing up, man. I was a big fan of Smurfs. To my parents' frustration, I'm sure, because I always wanted to get a Smurf toy if I ever saw one in the stores. That's what we had back then, was like Smurf figurines were everywhere. But I didn't have that many. But I had maybe like a couple dozen actually. That's not bad for a kid, right? Jack Pride, you've pretty much summed up why I love and hate The Boys. By the way, I turned 21 today, so now I have many drinks to try after watching your show. Okay, don't try them all at once. Okay, do me that favor. Don't try them all at once. That'd be a lot. Figure out what you like. I know what I like. Yeah, I liked The Boys for a little while at first when it started, but I got burned out on it, and it is a story I'd seen done before. Like if you've heard of Rick Veitch, Rick Veitch might be most famous for illustrating a lot of Alan Moore's Swamp Thing run, but he also made his own comics, and among those, there's a pretty influential one called Brat Pack. Brat Pack was, I think, 4 issues. It's hard to remember now. It was in the mid '80s, and it deconstructed like superheroes in terms of trying to take the ideas of Batman, Superman, Robin, Wonder Woman, and say like, well, what if they were real people and they were all like really messed up? They were really like kind of crummy people. But I've always felt that The Boys is really similar to that idea in Brat Pack. So, did you know that Butch Hartman recently quit Nickelodeon? No, I didn't. But I also don't know if I've watched any of his shows. I'm sure I'm aware of them, but I don't know if I've watched any of them. Miller says, was he making fun of gay people or making fun of people because they were gay? He would like have jokes, I think, where like, people reveal, they don't just reveal that they're gay, they reveal that they're like stereotypically gay, like they're super effeminate and into like all sorts of scatological stuff. And I feel that like when you deal in stereotypes like repeatedly, I don't know. I don't think that's that funny. I think that you can definitely make jokes with gay people, that but if you're going to sort of make the joke just that they are gay and they're like stereotypically gay, and that's sort of the whole punchline, I don't think that that's necessarily that funny. That's where I consider it punching down. Like if there's a minority group and your whole joke is just like, haha, this person is that, I don't consider that much of a joke. I consider like most of the best jokes to be when somebody is, like powerful and they get taken down a peg. Or if somebody like for instance, if who cares like what I am, okay? But if I was acting like really confident, right? If I was like walking around going like, I'm a great artist, I've got a YouTube channel that's hilarious, and then I tripped and fell down the stairs, that would be funny because I was acting high road and then I got taken down a peg. That's funny to me. I don't know. Let's see. Mark Barner says, the Liefeld is one of your best. I find it honest. Everyone just shits all over him. You aren't afraid to give him credit due. Oh, well, thanks, Mark. I'm glad to hear that came through. That's really nice to hear. Pretty Boy says, I hear Marvel has been going downhill the last few years. What's the deal with them? Yeah, a lot of people will say that. And I think that there's some truth to it. I think that Marvel lost a lot of its top creators 5-6 years ago, and they do have some good creators, very good creators. I don't know if they've got the best in the business, or at least the majority of the best in the business. And I think that that's where things sort of like just sort of fall apart. So yeah, they could be doing better. I think that they do have some fantastic characters, even some fantastic new characters, but that they're not presenting them in the best way consistently. And I think that, like, no matter who you are, whether you're one of these guys that likes to kind of shit on Marvel, or if you're a person that still loves Marvel, I think both sides would agree that that they're sort of lacking some of that top tier talent that keeps everything interesting and cool. I think most people would agree with that. Whew, Hollywood sucks with European, Japanese, American cartoons and other Asian book. British comic movies suck. The Smurf looks so crappy after watching lot of time and screw anime live action. Okay. Top Turtle says, if the person making fun of gay people, then that's not a joke. That's just the trait of a bad person. Yeah. Milo says, I don't like Western gay people stereotypes at all. I find it not to be representative of what I see in Serbia. Well, I think it's an old-fashioned sort of idea, too. I don't know. I don't want to, like, make out like I know what's best for how to present gay people. Like I try to be an ally, but do I know like what's right and wrong? Like I'm just a guy with opinions. That's all I am. I think Marvel's problem, this is Milosh again, is that they treat their core characters really bad in too many books. Maybe. Jack Pride said, thanks for the advice. I'll check out Brat Pack. I've recently checked out Savage Dragon. Will you ever do an episode on Eric Larson? Probably. I like Eric. Eric is somebody that I admire because he's doing what he wants to in comics. he can be outspoken and stuff, but I agree with a lot of his opinions too. Not always. Not always. But I agree with a lot of stuff from Eric Larson. So he's somebody that I admire. So that would probably filter into my opinion on reviewing his work is I like most. Now I don't like all of it. Like I do think that he's got a tendency to fall into too much cosmic stuff and sometimes get a little bogged down in that. Like it can get like a little confusing, but then he usually sort of like reboots a little bit with his work, and some of his cosmic stuff is good. It's just that some of it is just too much of a riff on what Jack Kirby did and not necessarily his own original ideas. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to say everything he does is perfect, but generally, I really like Eric Larson's work. He's definitely the one guy out of Image that completely stuck to his guns in terms of making his own comics the way he wanted to, and kept doing it. Didn't get distracted with Hollywood deals and toy deals and stuff. I mean, he did some of it, but he didn't get distracted. He kept working on his own comic. He still works on his own comic. And I won't be surprised if one day Eric Larson takes the record for the longest creator run on a comic. He's going to pass Cerebus. So, as long as he really is enjoying it, then I really give him credit, because if you can make a living doing what you want in this world, that's awesome. And every time I've met him, he's been really nice. I don't know if he'd remember who I am or not. In the early 2000s, we met a bunch at comic conventions, and we would talk some, but I don't know if he would anymore. Let's see. Sigamig says, have you seen the Dahmer movie? I have not seen it yet. I definitely read the comic many years ago, and I'm a big fan of the comic. I found it like a really interesting, humanizing, but still sort of creepy take on the person, with lots of sort of real world humor in there. Yeah, there's a lot that I liked about the comic book. I hope that the movie captures that adequately. I don't know. So I will see My Friend Dahmer, but I haven't yet. I think it is on demand here now. I'm pretty sure about that. Let's see, what else do I have? I recently picked up Batman Bride of the Demon, a nice hardcover edition here in Germany. Still a good read. Yeah, was that the one where he gets with Talia al Ghul and actually has a son? If that's the one I'm thinking of, it was originally sort of meant to be more of an Elseworld story, but now it's continuity, of course, because Damian Wayne is a character that exists. I think that's the book we're talking about. I try to tell people to give other comic companies a chance, but it's not easy. That's Comic Book Guy. Yeah, it's true. Sigamig says, hey Chris, have you read the I Hate Fairyland one-shot, where the main character goes through different Image books and ends up murdering Larson, McFarlane, etc.? No, I honestly haven't heard about that. Wait, maybe I have heard about that one. Hold on. Did Scotty Young do that? Tell me that. If it's Scotty Young, then I've at least heard of it, and I know what it is. But if it's not that one, then I definitely don't know what it is. Mueller says, I feel if Marvel treated their core characters better, there would be an influx of people who like the movies. Well, I mean, treating them better is just like hiring the best writers and artists and giving them good stories, in my opinion. we'll see if that happens. I don't know. I don't know. I hope this comes out okay. Comic Book Guy asks an interesting question. What's your opinion of Stan Lee? Whew. I mean, I grew up thinking Stan Lee was awesome. And I still think he, in many ways he's awesome. I'm trying to adjust this camera. I think there's positives and there's negatives to Stan Lee. I think that the positive was he was a cheerleader for comics, brought a lot of people into comics, kept them excited about comics. That's great. That's awesome. I think he did an okay job at mentioning his collaborators. Could have done it more, but he never didn't acknowledge them, you know? And he got better as the years went on. He could have been better. He could have been better. Some people say Jack Kirby, like, you know, created everything, and you know, Stan Lee rode on his coattails and the coattails of guys like, you know, Steve Ditko and Gene Colan, etc. Maybe sometimes, because I think the Marvel method of just sort of coming up with a bare bones plot for the issue and then letting the artist pace the whole thing and then just coming back in and adding the dialogue is sort of a lazy way of doing things. But he worked on just too many titles for me to think that he did nothing. You know, I think he did co-create all these amazing characters. That's what my gut tells me, is that he did do that. It's hard to say for sure. It's an interesting character, an interesting guy. I don't think people dislike comics as a medium, because I know a lot of people read manga. I think U.S. comics are not very approachable. I think that that's fair. I think that there's sometimes too much reverence put in continuity and stuff, and that, like, you know, we don't treat comics enough as like it's time for a jumping on point for new readers. I think that's a very real problem in the comic book industry here in America, and I think that the pricing model is kind of borked. I think it's too expensive. It's frustrating. Hey Chris, speaking of Stan Lee, do you remember the Just Imagine series where he wrote DC characters? That's from Jack Pride. Yeah, I do. And honestly, that's not his best work, but I think he was just kind of taking the paycheck on that one. I think he has been doing that for a long time. But that's fine, you know. Here's the tragedy about Stan Lee. Stan Lee wrote so many comic books that so many of us love. And he should have just embraced that in his prime. But by the 70s and 80s, Stan wanted this stuff to be what it is now. Big budget movies that everybody loves. That's what Stan always wanted. And he always wanted to write the great American novel, and he wanted to be remembered as a great writer. And you don't always get what you want. But he wrote some stuff that people love. Tons of stuff that people love. And it's too bad that he didn't really embrace that in the prime of his life. And even as he started to get into his later years. It's too bad that he didn't embrace that sooner. That's the tragedy of Stan Lee for me, is that he always wanted something else, you know? He wanted something different. And he didn't realize that he had something amazing and unique that other people would love to have. I don't think he realized that for a long time. Top Turtle says, "Oh boy, I just love whenever people just take all consideration for human beings out of the picture and just insult random artists for no reason. Very respectful and just wonderful." Whoops, I don't know what happened. I missed something, I think. Cookie Madison says, "Sorry, constantly walk the line between creator and company man, but I don't doubt his love for the medium." Yeah, Stanley, yeah. He does love the medium. He just didn't, he wanted something different for himself. He wanted a career as, like, you know, a novelist and a movie producer, etc. That's definitely what he wanted. And that's not what was going to happen at the time. But he spent tons of his years and effort into just trying to obtain that. Well, it came. He just had to be more patient for it than I guess he probably realized he would have to be. Because when he tried to force it, we got some pretty lousy attempts at movies and stuff. Excuse me. Stan's greatest talent as a TARDIS writer was in making Marvel a team you wanted to root for. Exactly. He was a great cheerleader for Marvel. There's no question about that. Like he's a huckster and, like a circus ringleader and a used car salesman and stuff in a lot of ways. But in a charming way. He's like Venkman in Ghostbusters, He's a little bit of a rascal, but you kind of love him. In my opinion. Your mileage may vary. Miles says, "I've heard Stan Lee would go into meetings and be an inspiration point for writers and artists, kind of like how Steve Jobs inspired people, or Miyamoto." Yeah, I think that once he became purely an editor, I think he mostly was that. I think that when he was writing himself, he may have sort of gotten on his creative talent's nerves. But who knows? I wasn't there, All I can do is read about it, digest it, come up with my own opinions on how it was. Oh, geez. I hate when I realize that I've taken the image completely off the screen and I'm just drawing and not showing it. What's the point of doing this if I can't get that right? Sorry, everyone. When you're drawing, it's very easy to just sort of like get lost in the moment. That's why sometimes I can get quiet, or the paper just sort of like moves off the screen. It's just me getting lost in the moment. You know, you're flexing a different part of your brain to draw and to converse and communicate. So it gets very easy to just get lost in the artwork. Yeah. Milos says that an expensive to average 30-page magazine in Serbia ranges from 50 cents to $1 in price. That's so crazy that our and you know, it doesn't have to be that way here in America. It's like they in the 90s, comics became huge because speculators started investing in comics. Like tons more people started buying comics than before. So, with all these extra copies being sold, Marvel and DC started like printing on nicer paper and using better printing techniques, and that produced a more expensive comic, but they were selling. Then everybody left, like all the speculators went, oh, I'm not going to make hundreds of thousands of dollars overnight. See ya, I'm not that interested. And then they kept printing stuff like on the really expensive paper. It's like, no, just no. You don't have to do it that way. Some titles might warrant that, the most popular titles. Otherwise, just print it in black and white, print it on newsprint, etc., etc. A good comic here would be like selling 100,000 copies these days. That's considered a good success. You know, you can sell a lot less and still be making money, but 100,000 copies a month, like something like a Batman issue sells 100,000. Good, we're content. Over in Japan, way less people, right? Like we have 300 million. I forget how many people are in Japan, but not 300 million. Weekly Shonen Jump, that's a weekly magazine, sells just shy of 2 million copies a week. 2 million versus 100,000. Weekly Shonen Jump is tons of pages, and almost all of them are black and white. People love it. Over here, no, we gotta make it this huge high-end production. It's just bonkers. It's just bonkers. Mr. Who says, I dream to be published in Shueisha. Good luck, man. That's awesome. That's a really exciting dream. Comic book guy says, in my opinion, Stan Lee's writing is okay, but not the best. He states the obvious in drawings. Yeah, he does. That's the Marvel method. TARDIS Rider says, never ever thought I want to go hang out in the wacky DC bullpen. Good point. Yeah, they didn't create the same energy. Jack Pride asks about Jim Shooter. That's a good question. Look, give me a sec. I'll come back to that. Let me catch up on some of these questions. That's a good one. Comic book guy says, I've seen strange comics as of late. Betty and Veronica meets Harley Quinn. It's kind of neat. Oh yeah, like DC and Archie are trying all sorts of cool things. Like DC's comics about Snagglepuss and the Flintstones aren't just trying to be what those cartoons were. They're just taking those characters and saying, like, how could you use those characters to tell today's kinds of stories? That's interesting. Archie's like, yeah, we did gag stuff forever. It can still be funny, but let's do, an ongoing serialized narrative with like a little bit more of a soap opera or something a little more modern with Archie. Sells really well because you get a good writer like Mark Waid and an amazing artist like Fiona Staples. Then they do horror comics like Vampironica and Jughead being a werewolf. That stuff's really, really fun. They're trying very different things with their characters. Very cool stuff lately. Has anyone listened, this is Miles Durkee, has anyone listened to the 70s Fantastic Four radio dramas. Stanley narrated it. It was great, and Bill Murray played the Human Torch, to tie back to Venkman. I have heard those. I have heard some of those. You're right. I miss all the holographic covers. Agree to disagree on that one. So I'm getting kind of behind. I'm going to jump back to that interesting question. Jim Shooter. If you don't know, Jim Shooter was Marvel's editor-in-chief for, a long time, over a decade, throughout the 80s. And, he saw a lot of highs, and he had a lot of interesting ideas, but he also had some bad ones. And from what I've heard, I don't know the man, but from what I've heard, he sometimes could be very difficult to work with because he'd lay down editorial dictates and say, like, you have to do things this way. And some of it made sense when you hear the rule, but then you start like thinking of how it like impacts the actual stories, and it gets frustrating. For instance, during the Dark Phoenix saga, Shooter said, like, you can do this story, but somebody has to pay the price. Like, you can't like have a character blow up a whole planet full of innocent people and then sort of get forgiven at the end. Like, that person has to, stand trial or die, etc. And that does make sense. But he also came up with a lot of like sort of arbitrary rules, and honestly, I also don't think he was very thoughtful about how Marvel treated its female characters or other minorities. And I'll cover this in some episodes coming up, but like for now, let me just briefly say that he did some very questionable stuff with North Star and with Miss Marvel that I think was pretty misguided. But I'm going to do whole episodes about them, so hopefully you'll let me leave it there. But Jim Shooter, I think, has good ideas, but also like almost like will only listen to himself at a certain point in time instead of being completely collaborative. And comics is a very collaborative medium, at least the way we make them here in the US. So, yeah. I gotta leave it there for now until I make these episodes. But I'm going to talk about Jim Shooter soon. I've been thinking about it. Thanks for asking. How long have I been doing this? I've been doing this for a while, right? Oh, just an hour and a half. That's not so bad. I missed something. Let's see. Jump Magazine is great because you get like 10 different comics to read. Wait, not Jump. I was thinking of Shonen. Yeah, that's the same thing. Shonen Jump. Jump is just sort of all their anthology comic magazines, and Shonen just means young adult. Just means the audience that it's primarily aimed at. Shonen Jump. That's a very strict process to become an editor there. They have to know their comics inside and out. And then you don't even necessarily, if you get hired by them, know like what line you'll be editing. It could be seinen, it could be shonen, it could be shoujo. You have to just be willing to take what you're assigned, and love comics. I love comics. You guys love comics? I think it's such a great medium. I don't know what kind of a story you couldn't tell well in a comic book format. I really don't know what kind. I think you can do anything with comics. So excited to go to Japan, y'all. Go back to Japan. I love it there. I don't know if they'll exactly love me right now because I'm American. Don't blame them, but yeah, Japan's pretty cool in a lot of ways. Not every way. Every country has its problems. What else? Okay, sorry. I missed some things. Top Turtle. Hey, Chris. Have you made any good friends via YouTube, Twitter, and other social media? I have. If I go back in time, before there was even a MySpace, when we had, forums. People would mostly post on forums, like kind of like Reddit and 4chan and all that stuff. But it was like there was one for that Wizard, the Guide to Comics, was running, and then it kind of died pretty fast. And but we all went to a site called Pencil Jack. Some people went to another one called Digital Webbing. But I met a lot of great people through there. A lot of people that I consider friends in real life that I've met many, many times in real life. So that's sort of my earliest experiences. In fact, one guy that I met on there is my neighbor, like a block away. I ended up moving to a different city about 4 years ago, and I've been friends with this guy online, but I met him originally on a forum, and I'm going to babysit his 6-month-old son this weekend. So, yeah, but that's somebody that I met online. And then, like, on Facebook, I don't know if I've, everybody friends you on Facebook, actually. Facebook's garbage. I'm taking a break right now on both Twitter and Facebook. I've temporarily deleted those apps off my phone so that I'm not checking them. I get it. It's a good way to understand what your friends are up to, but it's a terrible way to have to promote your channel and stuff. Nobody cares. You're talking to the same audience all the time. It costs a fortune if you try to pay for like ads, and then they don't even work very well. So anyway, brief rant over. But on YouTube, I met Hooded Cobra Commander. He does a channel where he reviews G.I. Joe figures from the 80s and 90s, and he started watching my channel, and then he won a giveaway that I had, and we started like chatting at that point because originally I just needed his address, and he's become like definitely somebody I consider a real friend. So yeah, I think you can definitely make friends through these channels. Interesting question. Is that Top Turtle? Thank you. Sigmigs, manga seems really hard to collect. Some series with 50 plus volumes. Well, I mean, I would just say that like same thing could be true of like looking at Action Comics number 1000, you know, like you don't necessarily you just start at the beginning though and say, is this for me? And if it is, it means you've got a really big story to read. Just start at the beginning. And remember that there's a lot of great comics and there's also a lot of crap comics or stuff that won't appeal to you. And that's okay. So you don't have to there's going to be plenty of stuff that you would never like. As I get older, I still like Wolverine, but he's kind of a one-trick pony. Grr, bub, snicked, lol. Well, comic book, I think that's true for a lot of superheroes. The characters, you know, they just keep sort of cycling through a lot of the same stories. So it really becomes, you know, only worth reading when a really good creator has a unique idea. But yeah, like as you grow older, I feel like everybody starts to realize that superhero comics aren't always for them. And you'll always sort of have a love for certain characters, but you'll just sort of like be like, maybe it's not for me right now. And then after a while, you'll hear, oh, you know, Joey so and so started writing Wolverine, and he's got a really interesting, unique take on him. It's worth reading. And you're like, all right. And you pick up the trade paperback, and you're like, yeah, that was actually a really unique, good story to be told with this character. So that's my opinion on superheroes. Is you sort of age out of them a little, but it all depends on the execution. Chris, have you ever stayed in a Japanese capsule hotel? They're really weird and amazing. I've seen them, but no, I haven't stayed in it myself. And you know what? Personally, I think I'd get too claustrophobic. No. Nah, not for me. Oh, all right. Miles has a good point. He says musicals don't work well in comic form. Fair. You know, you'd have to have like an accompanying thing. You could do a digital comic where music is playing while you read it, but you're right. It's sort of two separate elements that are just, they're not inherently intrinsically linked. That's fair. Musical is not necessarily made for comics. Good observation. You know who has a great Japan channel filled with facts and fun? Kathy Cat. Never heard of it, but thanks. I'll keep that in mind. Sigamig says, did you ever hear about the YouTube couple that had their home broken into by a man with a gun? No. No, I haven't heard about that. That sounds awful. Like, did it happen live on camera or something? That sounds pretty terrible. Let's see. Copy 2727 says nice. Okay. Milo says, when you were talking about Miss Marvel, you were referencing Avengers number 200, right? Absolutely. Yeah. I'm going to dig into that one pretty soon. The Demon had one comic that was a musical. You can do stuff with it, but I think Miles has a good point that comics aren't necessarily suited to be the best venue for a musical. Like I was saying that you could tell any type of story in a comic that is very versatile, and like you could tell family drama, you could tell a western, you could tell a war story, you could tell a crime story, a mystery, a horror, etc. You could do a lot of those things. You can't necessarily do a great musical with a comic book, because even if it has like great music attached, that isn't like inherently in the comic itself. That's just something you'd have to play at the same time. I don't know. I think almost everything else can be a comic, and love that slice of life is a genre of manga. Shows that anything can be a comic. Yep. About musicals and comics, okay? This is TARDIS Writer. I remember a Miss Tree issue that had a flexi disc of a song that somehow tied in. The record was made by a rock band of comics creators. It's interesting. Like I say, you could do a musical. You could like either have it digital or include a record or a link to an MP3, etc. Like you could do that, but those are sort of two separate elements. You're not really like the music isn't coming out of the comic itself. You'd have to like if you watch a movie, it plays the sound and the video at the same time. But a comic, you're sort of doing two separate things. Otherwise, it's animation. The 11 o'clock news did a story on his home security system and then got robbed. They knew his security and his whereabouts every night. Oh, Jesus. That's terrible. You won't see such a story with me. I'm not going to discuss my security system. Milo says, I saw Black Panther today. I cried a bit at the end. It's good. I agree. It's very, very good. Rocky Horror Picture Show comic had sheet music. That is interesting. Okay. It isn't still quite a musical, but you could have original sheet music with a comic. It's all print. It's up to you what to do with it. Yeah, that's close to finding an innovative way to include music. Like actually include. It would be aimed at someone that knows how to play music. Maybe like you could have a comic with like you could have the sheet music and then a story talking about it. Like that is sort of a musical in a way. Actually, making it that way. Because then the music is actually within the comic. I mean, you're not hearing it, but the music is within it if you're writing it as sheet music. That's interesting. Wow. That's a really innovative point. What do you do to battle depression? This world brings me down sometimes. Oh man, I'm not necessarily the right one to ask. I've got massively bad depression. If I wish I had a solution, man. I'm doing this right now so that I'm not like sort of alone per se. I'm keeping myself busy and I'm talking. There are a few things that I find help me battle my depression. Well, one is taking my medication. Second is exercise and eating right. Does keep you more balanced. It's a good idea. And then socializing. Keeping busy and socializing. Good luck, man. It's the struggle is real. Whew. Peter Smith says, I think it's kind of funny when they have a character sing a song and they say, to the tune of, your mind makes up the music like it does for the voices of a character. Fair point. I remember a Batman where he spent Christmas at the police station caroling with the cops. I know the comic you're talking about, Mark Berner. I don't remember the issue number, but I've read that one. And I considered actually reviewing it this past Christmas, but I was like, nah, I think I can either find something more unique or funnier. But it wasn't a bad option. It wasn't a bad option. It might still be something that one day I discuss. I got to figure out what I'm going to do with these words because I don't have an oval template to put these in a word balloon. Like usually I letter stuff digitally with Illustrator. I don't trust myself to freehand it. I could do it as a box, I suppose. Or just, you know what? Who says it needs to be in a word balloon? I mean, it's obvious that it's me saying it. I'm not going to put it in a balloon. Never mind. I just solved my own problem. I think I'm going to go back to making a comic strip or two. I used to do a comic strip on the robot's pajamas called Star Trek Problems, where I'd sort of poke fun at basically the tropes of Star Trek. And yeah, I think I'm gonna do that like next week. I'll keep you guys updated if I do that. All right, let's see. All right, let's ink this building. Let's do it. I got this. No, of course I don't have it centered. There we go. Ah, Milos found it. It's Batman number 219, volume 1. Volume 1 of Batman. Yeah, he ends it singing. It's just funny because Batman's really belting it out, going like, "Oh, holy night!" Miles Durkee says, "Do you play D&D or other tabletop games?" You know, I didn't play in like high school or college. I just didn't know about it too much, and I was like, "Oh, that's a bridge too far. I'm already pretty nerdy being into these comics. If I played D&D, people would really find out how nerdy I am." Something like that, and I sort of stayed away from it. And I wish I hadn't because a little over 2 years ago, a friend here was like, I'm going to be starting up a D&D game. Do you want to join us?" And I was like, "Yeah, I want to hang out with like you guys, so I'll do it." And so now we play at least like like once a month. Not that much, but we all sort of work, and some of them have kids and stuff. So that's about what we do. And in fact, I'm going to be getting together with them this Saturday to play, and I love it. I love making up a story and stuff like that. Yeah, D&D is something I really enjoy now, and I wish I wish I'd sort of discovered it when I was younger. I think I would have liked it. I think I could have been pretty good at like creating a story and having a good time like with friends doing that. Speaking of Star Trek, the comics about Chief O'Brien where he just stands in the transporter room board are hilarious. Yeah, I know the ones you're talking about, like Aldi. They're so much more popular than the ones I did. I did mine before that started, but those are some pretty funny, pretty great comics. I definitely admit that they're really good. Um, Mine are maybe a little bit like that, but about like all sorts of stuff across Star Trek. I don't know, I find Star Trek a little funny. I like Star Trek. I just also sort of find it funny. In some ways, I'm probably crazy for even trying to do this as a comic. I mean, these editors see the absolute best of the best, so I'm just trying to like show that I love comics, but they're gonna be like, "We see fantastic comics all day, every day, and you just sent us your chicken scrawl asking for permission to visit us. But your drawing was so bad that the answer is no." And fuck you for asking. I think that they might give me permission. There we go. And one more for good luck. Getting there. Slowly but surely getting there. All right, well, some questions. Let's see. Happy Chinese New Year, Chris. What's your Chinese zodiac? That's Sigamig's. I think it's the rabbit. I think. I'm not a zodiac expert. I'll look at another question in just a moment. All right, let's see. TARDIS Rider says, I used to do a comic, Xeroxed 4 issues of my character, the underground grammarian. He went around correcting grammar and thereby accidentally foiling bad guys. That's awesome. I love it. That's great. Let me adjust this a little. There, that's better. Comic book guy says, dumbest comic ever made in your opinion. I think the worst I've ever seen was Civilian Justice. I reviewed it. I think it just fails on every level. Just bad artwork, bad idea, bad writing, bad lettering, bad coloring. Just bad. Just so bad. That's the worst. What do you think of Dynamite and Project Superpowers? Sorry, Jack Pride, I'm not sure what that is. TARDIS Rider says, anybody read Fritz Lieber? I'm on a, and I've always been confused how to pronounce this, Fafard and Grey Mouser kick lately. I haven't read that. I read, I think, didn't, yeah, Mike Mignola once illustrated a Fafard and Grey Mouser story. Comic book guy says, Chris, you can do this. I believe in you. Thank you. Don't kick yourself. Hopefully they'll see your passion and that you're serious. Thanks. I'm not asking for work. I just want to, like, just sort of like say, hey, mind if I come up and, like just film the editorial offices for Comic Tropes. I think there's a lot of people in the Western world that don't necessarily know how you guys operate, how you make comics. And I would like to do an episode talking about that. Hopefully they see some benefit there. We'll see. We'll see. NFL Pro is pretty stupid. Yup, that's a bad one, Aldi. I agree. Miles, see you later. Thanks for stopping by. I appreciate it. Jack Pride says, I was talking about Dynamite Comics. Project Superpowers is basically them telling stories with Golden Age heroes from the public domain. I didn't know that. That does sound like a pretty cool idea. That's really cool. Huh. I'll try to look that up. Thanks, Jack. And Hook Flash also has a recommendation, apparently. Any thoughts on the Letter 44 series? It's super cheap on Comixology right now. I haven't been on Comixology in a while, so I didn't know about that. Letter 44. We'll keep it. How did you learn Japanese fast? I didn't. I paid for this to be translated. I wrote a letter and I had a translator translate it. I don't know how to speak Japanese. I wish I did. I'm using an app that a listener told me about called Duolingo. And it teaches you some words and stuff. Well, it like kind of gets you up to speed. Like you learn basic words and numbers and letters and sounds, and you just keep getting better and better, theoretically. Theoretically. I'm going to ink my panel borders real quick. Looking at my pen options. Ooh, I'm getting tired and hungry. And I have to finish editing this week's Comic Tropes. Perfect. Oh, ink with this. Mueller says, I read the Dynamite's The Shadow really bad. I don't know. Is it? Haven't read it. I don't know who even writes it. Someone mentioned you look like Hank Hill. I think the drawing of you looks like Adam Savage. Yeah, I don't know. It's just my take on trying to simplify some of my features. This is another thing that usually I will not really always bothered to do. Like I won't always bother to ink a panel border. I'll pencil one in, but I'll usually do it in Photoshop or something to get it nice and even, touch it up. But again, since I'm sending the actual page to the editors at Shueisha to read, I've gotta do every little detail. Had to ink the letters, have to ink the panel borders, make a mistake, white it out. Not easy. It doesn't look at all like Hank Hill now. It was just the way it looked with only hair. Yeah. Okay. I've graduated from Hank Hill to Adam Savage, huh? I guess I'll take it. By the way, in case you don't know, when you're an artist, you can't just get any ruler. You have to get one that's raised so that the lines don't bleed. Because if this is flush against and you draw with certain pens, the ink will bleed. But I'm sure a lot of you know that. But, yeah. If you don't, get a raised stainless steel ruler. How often do you have to throw an entire page out due to inking mistakes? I don't think I could handle the pressure. These days, never, Hook Flash. I mean, back in the day, like, people never threw the whole thing out because they made an inking mistake. First, you've got whiteout. You can always cover it in some whiteout and then try to redraw something. So you can always do that. If that isn't working, you could do a patch where you just cut out another piece of Bristol board, you know? I just go for the size that I need to repair, and I paste that on top of the area that was messed up. But these days, we've got Photoshop, so if it's a small mistake, you know, or even if it's big, if it's small, you fix it in Photoshop. If it's big, you just draw it on another piece of paper and size it in Photoshop. So it's like, you know, you never have to throw something out because of a big mistake like that these days. Hi, Anita. Bong hit. Nice art, man. I love the content on your channel, too. Thank you. That's really nice to hear. That's very nice. Let's see. Comic Book Guy says, at my comic shop, they have original comics of TMNT for $16 a piece. A good deal? Depends on what issue and what printing. I mean, I'll tell you now, it's not first or second printing of issue 1. So I don't know. Let's see, Mr. Who says, why all Americans love Hergé is because that Hergé was one of the flu European comic that can be translated in multiple languages, and that's why Tintin was so much popular in the world. Well, I think it's more than that. I think that his artwork was tremendously influential. I think that when we're talking influential Belgian and French artists, that you've got like Hergé, you've got Mobius, Jean Giraud, and I don't know, maybe that guy that does Asterix. That's pretty influential, but I think Hergé is up there as a very influential. His style influenced a lot of other artists that do bande dessinée comics. Jack Pride says, "Do you think Robert Kirkman will make another superhero title after Invincible?" Almost definitely. I don't know that. He hasn't told me, but I'd be stunned if he never wrote another superhero title. I'd be stunned. Because he loves this stuff. I don't know when Robert Kirkman would get around to that, but probably sooner than later. I think he'll want to do something with Cory Walker again. That's what I think. He and Cory get along really well, and Cory co-created Invincible and hasn't really been doing comics lately a lot. I mean, he's definitely done some stuff in Invincible, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the two of them did something. Let's see, TARDIS Rider says, "I'm planning to get to meet Roy Thomas at a Comic-Con soon. Any suggestions for a good question?" Yee. That is a... Let me think. I haven't thought of Roy Thomas in a while, so I'm like trying to think of sort of, what he's most famous for and what his techniques are, what his history is. Let me think about that one. Roy Thomas. Anybody out there think of any good questions to help out TARDIS Rider? Anita Bonghit asks, "Would I ever do a comic tropes on Brubaker Phillips?" Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm a massive fan of them. So, if I do an episode, I might be talking about their history, I might be talking about their techniques. It's very unlikely that I would have a lot uh, to like complain about because that's just what appeals to me. I think they make great comics. And I'm a big fan. So yes, there's an excellent chance that I will discuss them at some point. Probably this year. I don't have a plan yet, but yeah, there's definitely a excellent chance I would cover them. More questions. Let's see. Jack Pride has a suggestion for you, TARDIS Writer. Says, I'd ask Roy Thomas about Warlock or maybe who his favorite character is. Okay, yeah. Yeah, talking about the history of Warlock could be interesting. Sigmig says Fatale versus, or excuse me, Fatale versus the Fade Out. Those are the only two I've read completely. Between those two, personally, I'd say the Fade Out, but that's because I tend to prefer their noir mystery stuff. But you know, when you're like listing all-time favorite stuff that they've worked on, and I've enjoyed everything, but I'd put Sleeper and Criminal, most of Criminal stuff, up at the top, and I'd also put their current book, Kill or Be Killed, way up there. So those are some of my favorites. Sleeper's great. Mark Bander says, ask Mr. Thomas his opinion of the Marvel Cinematic Universe's take on the Vision. All right. Top Turtle says, Chris, I have something to say. Watashi wa oshidesu. Watashi wa means I am. Oishidesu. Oishidesu. I don't know what that means. Let me look. Oishidesu. Oishi. Oishi. It sounds sort of familiar, but I don't know what it means. Oh, it means you want some ice cream. Top Turtle would like some ice cream, everybody. So if anybody has some lying around, could you just, you know, help a brother out? So in this panel, I'm going to actually like paste in a weekly Shonen Jump cover. There's too much detail for me to like sort of trace that. Oh, Top Turtle says it means I am delicious. Okay, I mistranslated. I am delicious. Well, congratulations. What is your favorite criminal trade paperback? I have only read a few issues of The Fade Out, but I love Fatale so far. Probably the first arc. The first one might be my favorite. Yeah. TARDIS Rider says, good questions. He's ubiquitous in my favorite Marvel era, but I don't want to just be gushy. Yeah. Yeah, I get that. I'll go back to this for a minute. Watashi wa a Belgian waffle kudasai. That means I would like one Belgian waffle, please. I've gone silent. What to say? Are you excited for Action Comics 1000? says Jack Pride. A little bit. I'm personally happy that they're bringing back Spider-Man. Yeah, I'm happy that they're bringing back Spider-Man in Superman's comics. It's about time. No, I'm happy that they're bringing back his red briefs. I don't think the character looked right with just an all blue suit. I need something like a splash of color to sort of break it up. And they're bringing that back. So I know that's weird to care about, but I do, and I'm happy that he's gonna come back to the way I know him looking. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And also, it's just impressive, like, 1,000 issues. Even if they changed the numbering system here and there. It's I always wanted to see that. I always wanted to see it hit 1,000. Let's see, let me read this. Top Turtle. Chris, here's some life advice. Okay, life advice. If anyone walks on your lawn, say this phrase: hippity hoppity, get off my property. All right, let me go try that. I'll be right back. Thank you. Let's see, what else? Mr. Who says, if it a bad app that can badly translate and Japanese have katakana, kanji, hiragana, and can write horizontal and vertical. I don't quite get it. Sorry. I look forward to the issue 1 million of Action Comics in the year 85, 300 or so. Yeah, I think we'll be dead by then. All of humanity. Do you think Disney will ever let Marvel bring back Malibu or Marvel UK? I don't think that anyone has any plans to. The characters might come back, maybe. I don't think there's a lot of demand for either right now. All right, Top Turtle, thanks for joining. See you later. I'm close to getting done, I think. Let's finish up this face of me and see if I can make it look charming and lovable. Okay, Aldi says I was talking about DC 1 million, of course. No, I remember DC 1 million, where they just had all the different characters' titles from far in the future. That was the Hitman had the gunfire of the future that accidentally turned his med pack into a grenade, blew himself up. That was pretty funny. Jack Pride, are you interested in Doomsday Clock comic, not the real one? No, not really. Will I read it? I may read it down the road to review for the Comic Tropes show, but no, I've talked about this on like some other live streams. I think that DC kind of screwed over Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons by those guys never intended to give DC the rights to their comic. They signed a deal that said like DC would print their book, and then as soon as it went out of print, once it had been a year since the book had been printed, they would get their rights back, and they could do whatever they wanted with those characters. At that point in time, graphic novels were new. It was 1986. Hardly any had ever been made, and so like this was a new type of deal. Alan Moore had done a bunch of work with DC, had no reason not to trust them. He'd written, Swamp Thing, Superman, all sorts of stuff for them. And then they just decided, well, if we just keep it in print, then we retain the rights. So they've just intentionally kept it in print just to retain the rights to all those characters. And that's kind of dishonest. So, yeah, I don't really like how DC sort of came to own those characters. So I don't really want to support it right now. That's just a personal thing. Like, I don't care if other people decide that they want to read it and support it. Like, no judgment. It's just me personally. Yeah, so I may read it down the road. Like, it may, pick up when they're back issues and like that didn't sell. I may pick one up to review for the show, and I'll review it on its own merits. I'll try not to get too high and mighty about somebody else's creator rights. It's not necessarily my business. I just don't really like how DC did that, and so I don't really want to support it. So that's my long-winded answer to you, Jack. Hope that makes sense. TARDIS Rider says, regarding translation apps, good for specific vocabulary and phrases, terrible for longer items. I've graded tons of papers written in Korean and translated into English. Yeah, I'm not surprised. Mr. Who says, his art is influential, talking about Hergé. Franklin could beat his ass with Uderzo, creator of Asterix, with art, and Mobius, never know that guy. All I know is people praising his artwork and book like a crazy person. Hey, I'm not the one that, I'm not the only guy that's saying that Hergé's artwork was influential. Like, you go on to, I don't know, Wikipedia or anywhere, and people will say that Hergé was a very influential artist, and other artists started drawing like him. Like I'm not making that claim. I'm repeating a pretty common assertion. So you know, I'm sorry that you know I'm not telling you that you need to like his artwork. Um, I'm purely stating basically a fact that a lot of people have said this. But yeah, then again, personally, I do like most of Tintin. Some of it is dated, but a lot of it is very fun. I don't think that should necessarily upset anyone. Like I've said before, I'm not a huge fan of Rob Liefeld, but if people say that they love his artwork, I'm like, cool. That just means that you like comics. Like I have zero problem with that. Like that's good. Anyway. I'm close to done. I think that's all I'm going to do in this panel. In this panel, I'm going to add Jump, an issue of Jump. I don't love what I did with the building, but it's okay. Let's actually use the ruler there. Let's see. Mr. Who seems to not like me, says, I don't think it's a good idea to send in to Shueisha for your lack of Japanese language. Well, again, I'm not trying to get a job there, and I'll have a letter included as an editor at Shueisha advised me to do. And I have this translated by a professional translator. I didn't write this myself. I didn't put this into Google Translate. I hired a certified expert that gave me a certification that this is a good translation. So, you know, you can think that it's not a good idea. I'm doing what Shueisha recommended, and I'm trying to add the fun of giving them some artwork just to show them that I love comics. So, sorry you think it's a bad idea. I think it's a great idea. Jack Pride said, don't worry, it made sense. I do really wish that DC tried making Ben 10 a series since McDuffie had a hand in it, I think. I think you're right about that, actually. I think you might be right, but I haven't read all of McDuffie's biography lately. I read a little bit for Black Panther, but I didn't get too close to like the modern stuff that he did outside of DC. TARDIS Writer says, Hergé is influential for the same reason as Kirby and Eisner. They tell stories clearly in a graphic medium that teaches and inspires others. Mind the Comics joins us and says, Hergé sort of created a style, and I'm going to mispronounce it, the ligne claire, or at least made it very popular. I do favor Franklin, though. I think that's 100% fair, and I think that that's accurate. That's just the history. Somebody popularized it. That makes them influential. Does not necessarily mean that we're arguing they're the best. Sigmig says, what are some non-superhero comics you hope get adapted to the screen? I hope Seconds by Brian Lee O'Malley gets adapted. Yeah, that's a pretty cool idea. I like that. What else? What are some good non-superhero comics? There's one about the Green River Killer that I think would be interesting. That's real life. And as long as I'm talking real life stuff, there was also one by a writer-artist named Box Brown on the history of Tetris getting invented and coming to America and all the people that like sort of fought for those rights. And I think that would actually make a really interesting movie. And then I think Criminal by Brubaker and Phillips. I've said before, I'm a massive fan. I think that their book would be very interesting to read as a to see as a movie. I think that would work really well. So yeah, those are some ideas. I'd have to think what else would make sense. I don't know. Brain is slowing down a little as I've been sort of pecking away at all this stuff. Any tips on getting into the industry as an editor, says Jack. Well, yeah, there's a couple ways you could do it. One would be to try to get an internship. If you're in college or something, like getting an internship would be probably the smoothest way to get a job at a company as an editor. After that, I think you just want to look into editing positions in general, even like at any magazine or book or anything. And to do that, you'd probably need a degree in like English, and you'd need to do some copywriting and proofreading types of jobs. And then I think ultimately you could probably transition to working at like, Marvel or DC or IDW or whomever. Or you could try to be an editor for like a self-published or indie book. You could offer your help to a creator that's about to do something like that, and offer to coordinate things with the creative team and the printer, stuff like that. So I think if you could do that on like an indie or self-published book, that would also sort of give you the cred to then reach out and try to get a job at a bigger publisher. Now, one thing to keep in mind is the industry is small. So like you'll if you break in as like an editor for like a small press or something, or do several self-published things, you're gonna meet some people. Like it'll happen. So yeah, that's my advice. All right, I was gonna leave this like unfinished, but it looks too awkward, so I'm gonna use a pencil to draw in my face. Mr. Who says Franklin art is more cartoony and his art style is so much influential than Hergé. If he could created a carton, it would be much more better than the adventure of Tintin horseshit art. Jesus, dude, we all get that you don't care for Hergé. You've made it clear. Wow. Did he do something to you? There, I'm going to make it me, and I'm going to draw with the smallest brush I have, or pen. Let's see, maybe this will work. Okay, let's see. Darth Salad likes Tintin. Aldi says, sounds like Mr. Who has some sort of childhood Hergé trauma. I don't know. No, don't worry, Sigmigs. Hergé has been discussed several times tonight. That's all. You didn't bring it up. Did I? I don't think I did either. Jack Pride says, thanks a lot for the advice. One last question before I finally go out for a drink. What are your thoughts on Kevin Smith as a comic writer or director? He is those things. um, I used to like Kevin Smith's stuff a lot. I really did. I'm not a massive fan now. I don't have anything against him. I don't have anything against him. I just haven't really liked anything that he's created in a while. Trying to think, like, yeah, just not a fan of, like, I'm trying to think of the last movie he made that I sort of enjoyed was Zack and Miri. That one was okay. It seemed like he got really depressed after that. Like he expected it to be much bigger, and when it wasn't, he seemed to get depressed. That's fair, that's his business. Can't really say I love any of his comics. I don't think that they're that good. Yeah. I guess this sounds sort of like a non-answer. I just haven't really given a lot of thought to Kevin Smith in a while. I do think he used to have some fun ideas and stuff, but I feel like it sort of hasn't aged that great, if that makes sense. I did do an episode about oh, what's the name of his book? Like one of his Batman books, like maybe it was Cacophony or something like that. It's hard to remember, but I did an episode and I sort of expressed my thoughts on him there, I think. Yeah, I don't dislike him, but I don't think I love any of his comics. His Daredevil one that he did was okay. But that's about it for me. These days I think he directs a bunch of TV and stuff like and that seems like a kind of a good fit, like having him direct episodes of Flash and Legends of Tomorrow and stuff. That feels like it's a good fit at this point in his career, right? I don't know. I think that makes sense. Supergirl. Because I believe he has respect for those characters, so I like that idea. I think he should keep doing that. Hope that answers your question. Have fun with that drink. Don't go too nuts. Plenty of time to try all sorts of different things. Stouts and pizza tomorrow. Yum, yum. Rube Star joins us and says, looking good. Aldi says Dogma is a great movie. I liked it. I liked Dogma a lot when it came out. I don't know that I love it anymore. I don't know that it holds up that well, but it's not bad. Um yeah, I don't know. I like Kevin Smith. I haven't loved anything that he's done in a while. Nowadays, you don't see many European comics on the Atomic style because Spiro and Asterix, besides Spiro and Asterix, but you also don't see many in the Ligne Claire. However, Hergé was also influential on Franklin and Uderzo, surely. Anyone reading Tommaso's Spy Seal? I haven't, but it's somewhat of a modest approach to the Ligne Claire. I haven't read it, Mind the Comics, but I did flip through it on the comic, back in December. I was visiting family in Massachusetts. I went to a comic book store and I saw Spy the Seal. I flipped through it, or Spy Seal. I flipped through it. It looked really charming, and I almost got it. I wish I had, but I didn't. But it did look really charming. So yeah, I still may pick that up at some point and read it. Clean up some of these extra lines in here. All right. You know what? I think this will do it. Let me do something here. Is this the right one? I think so. There. Now you can see a little bit more. Sigamig says, do you know why anime manga isn't respected in art schools? I didn't know that it wasn't. Are you talking about cartooning schools? Like, because like, what is there? Like the Rhode Island School of Design and the New York Institute. And there's tons of. I guess I didn't realize that it wasn't. I thought that it was. Mr. Who yells, because it's all in caps, okay, for God's sake, Tintin was king and influenced everyone. Fuck. How I could created a new type of art style to beat Hergé and created my own legacy. Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Who. I don't understand everything you're trying to get across. It's fine with me if you don't like Hergé. It's no skin off my back. I was just repeating what I think is pretty much accepted as a fact that he was influential. That's it. You don't have to like him. All right, so there I go, folks. It's me talking about how I like comics. I'm from America, and I have a show on YouTube that discusses comic book history and tropes. That I'll be in Japan in a month, and I was hoping to have permission to visit Shueisha so that I could discuss what makes them unique and successful, try to explain the process to an American audience, and then I just say like how they can contact me, and I thank them for their time. So that's what I threw together. I'm going to mail this out tomorrow morning. It's getting late, so I'm going to have some dinner, and I'm going to go back to editing Comic Tropes, the episode that'll be up this Sunday. I think it's a good one. I hope you guys like it. Yeah, I go into a comic from the late 2000s that I am not a fan of. It's something that I think is exceptionally bad. But I'm going to leave it at that. We'll leave it at a mystery. I appreciate so many interesting people in the chat room asking all sorts of great questions today. It was wonderful. It was really great talking to all of you. It's one of my favorite things. Helped me fight my depression and keep busy. So thank you all for everything. Yeah, I think that's it. I have an exclusive episode up on Patreon, as well as a poll to vote for an upcoming topic that I'll probably do in like March. And then I'm also working on another exclusive episode for my patrons on Patreon. So consider checking that out, patreon.com/comic tropes. But thank you all for just being here and chatting. It's always fun talking to all of you. You guys are fantastic. Keep reading comics.